this is going to be your Go team panel, and I'm going to sit down and pass it over to Steve.
Hello, I'm Steve. We'll start with some introductions. So I'll go first. My name is Steve Francia. You might know me as SPF 13. I work on the Go team. I'm responsible for strategy.
I don't know why I'm out of breath. Like, that was weird. Taking off that hat was rough. My name is Cassandra. You've seen a lot of my face. I am a fairly recent addition to the Go team. I joined toward the end of last year, and I am running most of our DevRel programs.
I'm Andy, and my GitHub is Andy Bonds. I joined last July, right before GopherCon, Denver. And I manage the open source team, which is a new thing that was created recently.
And I'm Filippo, Filo Sottile on Twitter and GitHub. And I think I'm the most recent addition to the Go team.
Yeah.
I joined 2 months and a half ago. Before that, I was working in the community. I was working mostly on cryptography in Go, the TLS libraries when I was at Cloudflare. And now I work on the open source team with a focus in particular on cryptography libraries and the Xcrypto subrepo.
All right, thank you all. We got a bunch of questions around the same theme. And so I'm just kind of combine them, and we'll talk through that theme for a little while. So there was a lot of questions about how the Go team is going to work with the community and bridge some of the disconnected feeling that happens between the team and the community in itself. And I think it's worthwhile to talk through some of the challenges we've experienced and how we've approached it and some of the successes we've had. And I'll start first, and then I'll pass it around to different things. So the Go community, we use this term community a lot, and I don't know if anyone knows what it means. We usually refer to it, because it means a lot of different things in lots of different contexts. If we're talking about our user base is approaching 2 million people. That's a huge number of people. It's hard to think of 2 million people as a community, but you can do that. That is a thought. We can also think of a community as the people here in this room. We are the GopherCon Europe community, and we're all sharing this together today and this weekend. An interesting thing has happened to our community recently in that it's grown significantly. Our user-based community. In fact, you might have noticed that when we did this little exercise where everybody stood up and then sat down. Did anyone notice the biggest group? What was it? It was 1 year. In fact, we grew 76% in 2017. So that means that nearly as many people started using Go in 2017 as the 9 years prior to that. That's kind of a shocking thing to think, right? In fact, chances are, if you look to your left and your right, those are people, maybe not because people sit with their friends, but there's a good chance that the person next to you, the stranger next to you, is someone who's new to our community. And there's a good chance that you are the person that's new to our community. And when you grow that fast, the biggest challenge you have is that people feel less connected. And the larger the community gets, the more separate it gets. And the further people feel from the project leadership. And that's just the condition of growth. That's not to make an excuse. That's just to acknowledge that that's a challenge that we have to struggle with. And it's a great challenge to struggle with, but it is a challenge. So we started a survey in 2016 of our Go community because we wanted to track things like this. We wanted to see how we were doing. on a bunch of different community-related metrics. And from 2016 to 2017, we discovered that we actually not only kept up the feeling of inclusion with the community, but it actually doubled. So people felt, out of the 77,000 people that we surveyed, they felt twice as welcome in the Go community at the end of 2017 than they did at the end of 2016. And I think a big part of that is the community has leadership everywhere. Some of the leadership is the Go team at Google, which we represent. Some of the leadership is Natalie and Florin, who, without any direction, set up this community, of which we're now a part of. Some of the leadership is the meetup organizers. Some of the leadership is projects and the teachers. And so our community has leadership everywhere. And the fact that we grew almost double and people felt twice as welcome is a great testament to all of the leadership that exists throughout our entire giant community. And I think that's something we should celebrate. Like, I think that's something worth applauding for. Because the fact is, all of you have helped in one way or another, whether it's smiling at someone or shaking someone's hand or letting someone sit next to you or teaching a workshop or attending a meetup. Whatever part you did, you had a big part in that, and we're grateful for you. So give all of you a round of applause. That was a weird way to applaud, Andy. I don't.
You know when you have like a drink or something?
No.
Everybody ever do this?
I haven't.
Yeah, so I don't know.
It doesn't even sound like
That's
applause.
like too cool for me.
All right.
All right. Yeah, he's like a bebop. All right.
So what else last year did we, because the survey was we did that in January?
December. We do in December.
So what was done, because I think that looking at all of the questions that are coming in and having the conversations with community members, what are real tangible things that, kind of specifically, you had a lot of initiatives that you started last year on top of starting the survey in 2016. So what was specifically done that you feel helped impact that feeling of welcomeness, aside from all of the work we did here in this room together?
A lot of things. In fact, that was my primary focus for 2016 or 2017. So we started 2 new working groups. And we can talk about that in a little bit later, but we started 2 new working groups where we had leadership from the community and leadership from Google to push efforts forward. We did the first ever contributor summit where we gathered about close to 50 external contributors, joined with about 30 Googlers in Denver during the week of GopherCon to plan out the future of Go.
Was anyone at that? Yeah, that was that was the first contributor summit, but that was also the first time I started realizing there might be some changes happening in the Go team.
And I wasn't even part of the Go team when I joined.
Neither was I.
In fact,
I just joined. That was.
So
for the contributor summit, it was awesome. It was nice to see that. I had never had that before.
And then we also did a contributor workshop that week, where for the first time ever, our team mentored people and helped them make their first contributions to the Go project, and we got over 100 contributions that week to the Go project. So 100, I think it was 60-something new people had contributed to the Go project for the first time as a result of that. We've also changed how we blog. Our blog talks more about our community and the efforts that we're doing throughout the community. We're trying to highlight it more. We're also trying to now bring back more technical content because sometimes pendulums swing too far. But we're trying to bring more of that community voice. We also worked on a new code of conduct, which we launched last week and worked on for over a year. So there are a lot of efforts that we did, and this isn't even all of them. We also did efforts where we helped. It's a very hard thing to set up your first conference. If you've never done it before, don't try. It's very hard. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's kind of one of those situations where you can't get it right, so you're going to upset some people. And even if you get it right, people are just going to think that you did the normal thing, in spite of how hard it is to do. But it's like running a marathon. At the end, though, there's no prize or ticker tape or anything. People just kind of say thanks.
But thank you so
At a
much
marathon,
for
you at
doing
least get a
it.
medal.
But the reality is you have to be courageous to do it. And we're grateful for the people that do, and we try our best to support them and share some of the things that we've learned over the years, and as well as add financial support where we can to help their efforts. And we added 5 new conferences this year, and we added 4 new conferences last year, and that's a lot to do things to let people from different parts of the world feel like they have a presence in their place without having to fly to Denver or fly right to the United States, that they can actually have a local conference where they can feel like they're part of something bigger. And then we try to visit and spend time with them in those so that they recognize that we appreciate their efforts. There was a lot of things there. And that's not all the things, but there's a lot of effort that we've been going through to try and to address this problem. So I think it might be an interesting thing is, another thing that we've done is hire people from the community. And it just so happens that on this stage happens to be 4 of the 5 most recent hires to the Go team. And they're also the 4 hires to the Go team that all happened from the community. So I was the first community hire in many, many, many years. And then I guess it went well because we kept doing it. And so we ended up adding Andy and Cassandra, and then most recently Filippo, all of which come from the community. And it helps us give a perspective that wasn't held before, and share it with the Go leadership that leads to these kind of changes. So I wanted to ask a specific question about Filippo and your experience in going from community member to joining the Go team just a month or so ago.
Right. So I had been working on the project before, and my previous company was awesome for letting me contribute to the project as part of my job there. I was working at Cloudflare, which does a bunch of Go, and there I worked on the crypto libraries, and there was a process of getting to be part of the project that started way before and actually separate from getting to join the Go team. That happened pretty quickly in the last 6 months, but I had been already reviewing code on Gerrit. I had already been answering issues, triaging, and I started having more responsibility, more access before that. And thankfully, Google never realized that they didn't have to pay me for me to do this job. But no, but seriously, joining the Go team hasn't really changed that much my day-to-day involvement in the project. Gave me more time to work on it. But most of the big change has been that I really feel that I can bring some of the perspective of the industry, because I've been in companies that build Go but don't have the same structure as Google. I've built tooling. I've built vendoring tools, GVT, which I hope no one is using anymore. So I have a series of opinions about how things looked like from outside, and the team has been pretty open to asking and listening to how these perspectives worked like from the outside.
Cass, could you talk a little bit about, were you going to say?
Do you want to say
I was
something?
going to ask him a question. Really
Ask him a
quick.
question.
Can I? Well, it's just that there was a lot of new Gophers in the room, and so it's kind of like you hear that story of like, I was a community member and now I'm on the Go team, and it kind of is, I don't know, it feels a little intangible, frankly, even to me when I was being approached. I was like, no, not know.
It's like drawing the owl.
Yeah, it's
you know, like
weird,
the
right?
two
It's still
circles.
weird, frankly, to say that out loud. So I was more curious about the, again, because New Gophers, the contribution process. So you were like a contributor and then, ooh, I'm going to get this wrong and it's going to be embarrassing, but a reviewer and then a approver. Like, what is that, and like, how does someone do that?
So I definitely did start from zero. Like it's not like at some point I was recruited into the project to start working on things. I've started just working on cryptography because I like it. I don't even have a formal background. I don't have a CS degree. I definitely don't have a math degree. You don't need that to do cryptography, turns out.
Wow, that's sorry.
But I think I started answering some issues, or mostly I started by using the libraries. And then I started fixing the small bugs, and I'm pretty sure that my first 2 CLs were rejected. Because like you still are figuring out how it works, and cryptography, it's one thing that it has to be is strict, right? So I did slowly get into it. It helped that it was part of my job to use these libraries, and it was thankfully part of my job to upstream a bunch of these changes. But this was all not with a mandate from Google or anyone in the Go team, but just from the my job that was working on TLS, or before that, the NSSEC. You mentioned from contributor to reviewer. There's not a line there. Everyone in this room is a reviewer on the Go project. You can go in there and +1 things, and that's super helpful because there's often a first pass that just like when you triage an issue and you ping the right people, that's helpful to the project. You can do the same with code. You just show up and you're like, hey, the commit message, we formatted a bit differently. Here's a wiki link. And you probably need some tests for this to be reviewed. And a lot of small things that are very useful because reviewers are a bit overcommitted, and it's useful when the first cycle of review comes from anyone in the community. So I did a bit of those. I started to learn more about what the decision process was like and started to give more suggestions. And the switch from there, the +1 on Garrett, which is just like, this looks good to me, but it's not enough to submit it, to having the permission to add the +2, did not really change what I was doing on the project. Towards the later stages, I would give the +1, and then someone would come by and give the +2 without commenting anything, without doing anything else, and then it would be submitted. And that's just a change that gives you the technical permission, but you don't need the button to do reviews. So contributor, reviewer is just one amorphous stage. And after that, there's approver, which is just like the permission. And yeah, at that point, I was contributing, I think, pretty much at the level I'm contributing now. Just now, it's my day job, so I actually have to go review the CLs I don't want to review, but yes.
Thank you.
Way too much assembly.
And how did you, what was the process to go from the person giving +1s and comments to getting the +2?
So this might not be as useful for everyone because cryptography has always been niche and expert-driven because like other reviewers did not feel like giving the final approval. So the Go crypto libraries had been written originally by Adam Langley. So he had retained authority of ownership on that code. So eventually it was, I think, discussed with Adam if he was comfortable with me having like a last word on changes. And initially it was just on things that weren't API changes. And to this date, I still ask Adam for his thumbs up on API changes because those are consequential. And you know, we have the Go 1 compatibility promise, and any bad API we put out there, it's out there forever. And in cryptography, a bad API means an insecure API, and that can be catastrophic. So that had a very specific owner, but I think Andy can speak a bit more about how we want that process to work, like the onboarding and the...
Yeah, I think it needs to be more well-defined. I think that right now people will So my background is more in front end than in programming languages, and so I've been helping review stuff on GoDoc on our website, and we have a new website coming out, so I've been doing reviews on that. And there are members of the community that have been contributing to that. And so I'll do those reviews, and then I think they get to a point where after a couple of reviews, they say, hey, can I get the bit to +2 things? And you look back on it, and you look at what reviews they've done, you say, okay, yes, you seem to show a certain amount of proficiency. But one of the problems I think that is that it rewards people that are comfortable saying, hey, I want access. And I think that is not as accessible to as many people as I would like. And I think the team agrees with me. And so I think that one of the things that we need to do is have more of a formal process where you can go somewhere and you can say, okay, what is the path from I'm a Go programmer, or I've never written Go at all, to I want to be a contributor, whether it be have the +2 bit, or be able to triage issues, or do whatever.
One of the things that happened recently is that owners of different parts of the code base are being more standardized, and we would have probably been more comfortable giving me +2 on cryptography specifically than the entire project, and that would have probably been a smoother process. I think that something that a way to look at the +2 bit is just as friction. When you don't have the +2 bit, there's the friction of having someone pass by and see that you reviewed and approved something and give the approval. But that's it. Giving people that level of access is to remove that friction and that bottleneck on the people with the +2. But the same contribution can be made without it. And I think it works well by just doing some of that work, and at some point you're like, damn, it's annoying that everything is slowed down because people have to come by and just give the rubber stamp to what I just reviewed. And that's the moment to ask, hey, by the way, can I just get the bit?
And as beginners, I would say that you're probably, the beginners in the room, I would say that you're probably in the best position to critique the APIs, because you're coming into it with a beginner's mindset, and you can say, okay, this is really confusing. And I think one of the traps that people fall into is thinking, and I fall into the same trap as, is thinking that the team that reviews it and approves it is this infallible sort of mass of people, and this is sort of going back to the community stuff and being reachable and approachable, and that they're just going to strike down on you with their lightning bolt and say you are nothing. Why are you giving us this info when it's extremely valuable? And so we really want people to give us feedback and say, this API is really confusing, or this could be better in this way, or this could be better. And the first couple of times, as you get acclimated, we may say, thank you for your issue. This is not actually the way that we want to go, but persistence, it does help, and we do want to encourage that.
I remember being kind of worried about giving my first +1s because I was like, I'm no Adam Langley. Why would they want my spam on there just saying my opinion about this patch? And that's wrong. That's just not the case. Every time I pass by on a crypto CL where someone already did a round, gave a +1, or gave some opinions, that's super useful. Never once thought, I wish this person didn't do that. So definitely go, and if you think something's skimming the code, click it. Remember to send the drafts. Garrett does not send the comments until you click reply. Yeah. Anyway, but definitely do that, and don't worry about it. The only thing, be nice to the person you're reviewing, because there's a person on the other side of the review. Don't destroy them just because you can. But as long as you're nice to the person that submitted the code, the reviewers are very happy with you doing that. And that's the path that leads to the maintainer, actually, at least a piece of the.
And if you experience anybody being unpleasant to you, whether they're on the team or not on the team, please tell us. We don't want to accept that. That's not okay.
So this relates to one of the questions that people asked, and you've kind of answered, but I want to ask it again. A lot of people feel intimidated to work. One of the questions, I'll just read it because it's worth reading. It said, what are the plans to encourage more people to contribute despite Go being promoted by the community as a language written by gods? like Ken, Rob, Robert, or Russ. Now, we've gotten to work with them, and I can say that they're not gods. But the reality is there is a perception that they're somewhat untouchable. They're somewhat unobtainable. And I remember often feeling, how can I add any value to this at all that they're not already able to do? And I think there's a common thing. And I think there's some people that are saying, I'm interested in getting, in fact, from our survey, we know that there's thousands of people, I don't remember the exact number, but more than half of the people that took the survey said they wanted to participate in the project. And that number was much higher than the total participation in the project to date. And I think there's a good number of people that are looking for a way in, and some people might be looking for an invitation, and there's a sense of not qualified or not good enough. And what are the things we're doing to work on that? Or what would you say to people that feel that way? Cass, what would you say to people that feel that way?
Yeah. I knew he was gonna. I felt it. I felt he was gonna direct that toward me. For me, it's more of what would you say to the people who feel that way, because I have felt that way, and honestly, I still feel that way sometimes. It is intimidating when you have people like that on the team, but what I learned really early on, and one of the reasons why I fell in love with the Go team the Go community, because I very clearly fell in love with the Go community around 4 years ago, was that I felt like if I did have something to say as a newbie and someone new to the community, it was actually heard. And Andy touched on it for me of the utmost, which is that your opinions and vision and needs as someone who's especially in their first year, frankly, on their journey as a gopher, is so valuable, and is in a lot of the time more valuable than people who are the gods on the team, because you see some of those holes that we frankly cannot see because we're so close to the matter. And we experience this a lot in some of the things that I do that are more DevRel related, where we're having to run through, why are you phrasing this way? Or why is this being portrayed this way? Or the community has no context for this. You need to give more information. So I think it's really more about the perspective that you provide is much more valuable, and we don't have that perspective.
And we learned a lot from talking to the contributor summit, just how bad it was or just how hard it was to contribute from a code, like contributing code and patches. And in fact, you had rewritten the contributor guidelines just to make it sort of usable so that people could try and follow it. And then after that, somebody from the community had rewritten it because it was still not, as clear as it needed to be.
To be even better.
And it's not to say that things are perfect. We know that we have plenty of work to do. But that's definitely an example of, it's right here for us. And so, all of our commands and everything are just sort of second nature. And so we just type the things in and get things mailed, and we work. And the things that are sort of quirked or weird, just, for us, they're like in the back of our head because we're like, we just need to get this other thing done. And pointing those out is actually really, it's refreshing, and saying, hey, that thing is really confusing and it's a pain in the ass. And we need that.
I had made a point when I was at Cloudflare of speaking with new developers that would come in and their first impact with Go. And in the Go, I sense how in the Go team it's even harder. At Cloudflare, I was one of the most senior Go people, and so I had the same problem. Oh yeah, our repos, you just clone them into the right path in the Go path, and they just build. And people would be like, but they don't build. But builds. And so then I started shadowing people. I would just sit down and just do your thing. Here's a tool, use it to deploy a machine. And the result of that was a horrible makefile that I made to work around the Go path, having to clone things in the right place. It was called Hello Gopher. And I'm very happy to see that, for example, Vigo allows you to build without a Go path at all. That was one of the things I was most happy about. You can just clone wherever and build. And I was very much looking for that because, again, when you have everything set up, it's easy. But how many people here struggled with setting a Go path the first time? There you go.
Yeah, it's bad.
The rest of the people are just too sore to raise them.
Or
Right.
tired. I think that just like the overbranching theme there for me is speak up, because the Go team is clearly in a space of transition. The Go community is in a space of transition. Growing over 70% is not an easy feat. Understanding needs is of the utmost importance, and it's frankly the one thing I've been working on for the last 7 months is getting to know the Go team, how Google works internally, and then starting to document and understand the needs of the community. And if people and Gophers are not speaking up and letting us know what it is you need for us, it's really hard for us to figure out how to prioritize what those needs are. So, just speak up, take action, say when something is difficult or frustrating so that we have it documented so we can put it toward those numbers and say, listen, Go team, this is what we need to work on, and this is how a dramatic good effect it would make to our community members.
And we're also more locally, we're right here and happy to listen to anything that.
Well, not in Iceland, but
What?
here, but not in Iceland.
No, I mean today, like at the conference, like if you see us, our time is not more important than yours. We may say we need to go, we're at the end of the conference now, but before Cass and I were kind of running around because we were emceeing, but come and talk to us and say, hey, we have this major issue. And the issue could be, I don't know how GoPath works, or it could be, like,
I want to start a meetup.
I want to start a meetup, or like, I'm concerned about the community and the reachability of leadership. And, we're right here, and we're human, and we're willing to talk to you. And no, it sounds trite, but no question is stupid. So don't start a question with like, I know this is a stupid question, but, it's a question and it's valid, and, we value that interaction.
I don't know how long we have, but I don't.
See, the MC in me is like,
Since
well,
I'm not
we
the
have about
MC.
15-ish minutes left.
Okay, so we've
15,
got 3
20.
topics that I think we need to address.
Yeah.
And we'll spend 5 minutes on each because we have 15 minutes, and I'm good at that kind of math. I don't have a formal degree in math either.
I'm not good at any math, so.
Okay. So there was a bunch of questions around the Go proposal process and how to help steer Go and how to be more involved with it. And I thought I'd just talk a little bit about it. So I've been a member of the Go Proposal Review Committee for 2 years. And it has been one of the, honestly, one of the most educational experiences I've ever had. And so I'll describe a little bit about what the process is and what happens in the review committee and how we meet and how we talk about things. The beginning of the process is somebody submits a proposal. Anyone can submit a proposal. There is no barrier to submitting a proposal. And all directions that happen with the project start as a proposal, and they can come from anywhere. And so anyone submits a proposal, you do that on GitHub, you type up what you think the change should be. Hopefully you've identified a problem that you want to solve first, because that makes it a lot easier. And then weekly, and then other people, and then the next step in the process is other people make comments on those proposals. And they ask questions, and there's often, sometimes there's no discussion, sometimes there's very, very, very long discussions. We let those discussions happen for quite a while, usually until they either get to one of 2 places, a conclusion or an impasse. All right, so then weekly, Monday evening, the proposal review committee meets, and it's Russ, Robert, Ian, Brad Fitzpatrick, myself, Andy, and Peter Weinberg. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one.
You say Rob?
And Rob. Rob is on it. Rob is always allowed to come because of Sydney, where he lives. It makes it hard to attend. So he's on, sometimes because of daylight savings time and stuff, it's very, very hard for him. So he's on the current part that he's not attending as frequently. But we meet and we discuss things. I'd say most of the time, not most of the time, a large percentage of the time, when we get to the proposal to review it, the community has already made a decision. And that's the surprising thing, I think, to most people. So most of the time when we get to look at the proposal, the community is already determined that this proposal is not a good idea, or this proposal is a good idea. And we almost always go with the community decision. Sometimes the community is at an impasse, and then we have to make a decision. If the community is at an impasse, then by definition, whatever decision we make will not make some people happy, and will make some other people happy. Our default answer is no. All right, Peter, in his talk this morning, talked about one of the things he valued most about Go was how little it changes. I think that's something we all value about Go. By definition, that means the default answer is to not change things unless there's a really, really good reason to do so. And that for me was a big eye-opener to see that, and some people struggle with that, but it is it. I think especially, I think people individually struggle with the fact that they were told no, or a feature that they cared about was said, we're waiting on this. But I think we all value the fact that we don't add a lot of features. And those two things go hand in hand. So you might not be happy that we said no to your specific feature, but you're happy that we said no to most of them. And frankly, most other people are happy we said no to yours. And anyway, that's a hard part, and there's always some tension around that. We have a couple, Andy looked up, or Filippo looked up a couple stats around where the proposals come from and how often we get rejected. Do you want to share anything around that?
Well, the question was how many proposals that are accepted are from outside the community. And 60% of proposals are from non-Googlers total.
So the majority of
the accepted ones.
Of the accepted ones.
The majority of them come from non-Googlers.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we were looking, we didn't have time to look up the exact stats on it, but we know that we're actually harder on Go team proposals. We reject a lot of them. It's not like if you're on the Go team, our proposals are the ones that get in. Most of my proposals have gotten rejected. I think most people in the team have that experience. Our proposals get rejected at a similar rate, if not a higher rate, than community members.
Yeah, direct access does not get you.
It doesn't make anything different.
One of mine has been essentially, they've been like, no, like you're doing this outside of this, and that's it.
Part of what makes this hard is that almost every proposal has an upside. It's not that like proposals are bad and would not help with at least one use case, because otherwise people would not have typed that map. I see it a lot with cryptography. When someone comes and asks for a new algorithm, a new API, there is a real use for it, and almost all proposals have a real use and a real upside. The problem is that if we start accepting them all, then there's more than one way to do each thing, and maybe you come to the crypto libraries, and now you find 15 algorithms. 3 of them are insecure, and 5 of them are dangerous unless you use them sideways. Now, that's not what you want. And that's not what I like about Go. What I like about Go is that there is one way to do things, and it works well for a solid 80% of the use cases by implementing 20% of the things.
So my favorite part of the review process, and first it's not perfect. I want to start with that, and you can help us improve it by submitting proposals. which help us improve the process. I'd say my favorite part is that anyone can participate, and most releases were steered by the community more than Go, in the fact that most of the proposals came from, that were created in those releases came from Go members, or Go community members. So now we're going to pivot. We have a question, and I'll read it verbatim. It says, DEP was the first major community-driven project to solve a problem that the core team didn't have the bandwidth to address. What lessons should the community and contributors take from the outcome? So I want to thank you for the question. And I wanted to talk a little bit about a fallacy that we often fall into, and that's the fallacy of failure. Every time you create a new version of software, every time we release version 2, version 3, there's an inherent part of that that says, well, if you had to rewrite it, you failed the first time or the previous time. Now, we don't believe that, right? None of us believe that. We actually know how hard it is to create it, and the reality is that if we didn't do version 2, we'd never get to version 3. And in each of them, we've learned and we've built upon things. And in this, the Go community has been through a long process through dependency management, which has a lot of these attempts of learning. And to think of any of them as failures would be the same fallacy. The reality is every person who's contributed to any of these tools has helped us experience and learn and improve. The DEP working group made a huge stride towards that. I want to thank them all publicly. I wrote them down because on stage I might not remember their names as well. But thank Peter for organizing this group, and for Sam and Ed and Jesse and Andrew, who put tireless hours in working through this. And what they accomplished is phenomenal. They were able to take a bunch of disparate solutions and unify them to a single one. And that was the first time in Go's history that we actually had a single dependency management solution. We also need to thank Carolyn, who's done a great job with maintaining it, even though she wasn't on the original working group. You might be more cool.
Yeah, put that level higher.
Yeah, the person that continues to do the work is the one that's, in my opinion, the most important.
I also have an example of how the DEP and that process actually informed what was the design of Vigo. DEP raised the status of fetching packages from and modules, or however, fetching code from the internet to the same level of security of other package managers by having hashes in log files that meant that once you clone a repo, you have pins for what you're expecting to download for all the dependencies. And GoGet did not have that. GoGet came from before that and would just fetch directly from GitHub. And Vigo, one of the changes that happened after the original design was to have hashes always enabled so that it has the same level of security as that, because we know that that's where the community is and what we are building upon, which might not have been the case if we had just GoGet and a constellation of different things with different levels of security to build upon.
Thank you. I think there's a lot to be grateful for with this. I also want to acknowledge that this is a challenging problem, right? If it's not obvious, the fact that there's been so many different attempts to solve this problem, it's very challenging. And with each one, we've learned things and we've improved. The reality is, when we formed, one of the questions, part of this is what lessons we learned. This is all, community is like a messy thing. There's not an established path to tread on. This is one of 4 working groups that we've established. In each of them, we made mistakes. In each of them, we've learned a lot of different things. Some of the things we've learned is that it's critical to have Go leadership from the Google team, as well as community leadership in each of the working groups. We've also learned from each working group that people that are community participants have reported feeling burned out and overwhelmed with it, especially over time. So there's always a lot of excitement at the beginning, but a few weeks in, people start getting fatigue. And we don't know what the right balance of that is yet. We're still trying to figure it out. But in this and in all the other working groups, we're learning, we're experimenting. I think it's important to recognize that at the beginning, no one knew what the answer was, right? And that's the hard problems to solve. Those are the fun problems to solve, but those are the hard problems. When you begin the journey, there's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of learning, and we're on that process. And so through each of these iterations, we've learned things. Without DEP, there would never, ever be integration into the Go command for any dependency management. It was a critical step. And when we started down that path, none of us knew what the end was going to look like. And as we looked at it and started working with the users, we continued to learn more and more. And some of those realizations are things that, like, we always knew we wanted it built into the Go command, so it was native and accessible to all people. What that looked like it's been a journey of experimentation. And I think there's room to also spend some time after looking back and trying to see all the lessons we learned and capitalize them. And they call it a post-mortem, but that usually involves after an incident. This is not a post-mortem. This is just a reflection on our journey and seeing how we can better apply it in the future. So I hope that answers the question, but we are very grateful for all the people that participated and for everyone that used it, and we're all looking forward to having a solution that we're all behind and can use. And I will say one thing about Vigo: the proposal was accepted, and a lot of people have thought that meant that it's done. The reality is it's not close to done. There are bugs, there are issues. It does not work for everyone. We need your help. The reason we accepted the proposal was to give tool maintainers, as there's a lot of changes that have to be made as you introduce versions into the import path. That's a big change. That change requires lots and lots of plumbing work on pretty much every tool out there. We wanted to give them the most time possible to make those changes. There's a lot of things that need your feedback on. Please give it. Please play with it. Give us feedback. We do not have a fully functioning implementation. We have a prototype.
Oh yeah, I was just mentioning that the vendor folder was reintroduced thanks to feedback. So that's definitely listened to and useful, because it shows what the community needs and what Vigo needs to do to work for everyone.
All right, so we're gonna end now with one question, which I'm gonna have each of you give your own answers to. And that is, what do you want the Go community to look like in 5 years? And we'll start with Cass.
5 years. 5 years isn't, it feels like a long time, but then it's not a long time. So I'm gonna try to think about what I see the team and the community being capable of in the next few years. And I think that for me, I would like Go to become kind of the language to be the most inclusive community that we've seen thus far within the next 5 years. And I do mean inclusive in all ways, to contributors, in terms of diversity. I would like to see better access to educational content. So a lot of kind of what I'm seeing, doing my synopsis of what needs to be done for the community, is just better put together methods for people to increase their skills, adopt Go, advocate for Go within their companies, and feel connected to the community. So I would like to see just an educational platform that no one has ever seen before. And I would like to see those numbers in that survey just continue to exponentially rise of people feeling welcome in the community. I would be severely disappointed if it ever dropped after we've had, the first couple years of it, so.
I think for me, in the next 5 years, if we see the same amount of growth that we're currently seeing now, then growth is just painful. That's just the nature of growth. And we're learning that now through a lot of the hard lessons that we've been learning. But as we grow, unless Google gives us way more people, which I can't foresee what our headcount is going to look like, then it will become even more crucial for the survival of the project to have the community be involved in way more than they currently are. And so a lot of that is establishing, and I'm trying to do this now with the, taking away a lot of responsibilities from people who, we were talking about before, who are considered gods, right? Then they're not. They're people, and they're approachable. And one of the challenges that I have now is that I'm trying to build a team where we're going to be taking responsibility away from some of these people. And building that trust in them is part of my job, in that I need to sort of think about what they would do and then act accordingly, but also take in my own and my team's inputs and say, okay, well, he may have done it this way or she may have done it this way, but we're going to go in this direction. And then the natural evolution of that, I think, is as we involve more people in the community, where we want to see a much higher percentage of community members than people actually employed by Google contributing majorly to the project. And as part of that, we need to work out how we establish that trust such that the core team and everybody just feels like the project is in good hands. And I think we can get there. And it's hard, and I'm not sure how we're going to go about it, and we're probably going to make mistakes, and I'm going to screw up. And that's on me because I'm trying to lead this. But I think it can be achievable. So I think more community engagement to the point where there's way more impact that the community can have is what I want to see.
My answer is very similar to Andy's and in a sense complementary. I want to see the community scale well, both in terms of the scaling problems we already have, for example, reviews and building tools and systems so that we don't have bottlenecks and we don't make people feel like things are not working for them. But also, for example, in terms of where the development is and how centralized around, for example, the subrepos things are. I feel that a lot with the X-crypto subrepos because right now people feel like things to be trusted have to be in the X repos, Golang/X, but we need the community to scale to a different. For the community to scale, we need ways for it to start making decisions about what is trusted in terms of code developed by the community, maintained by the community, that lives outside and is not maintained directly by us. And then also scale well in terms of discussion. When you have a lot of people, it can become hard to discuss things because it becomes a lot of voices and yours can get drowned out. I honestly did not enter some of the issues on GitHub because also partially because thankfully it was not my role to discuss them, but because I saw that there were hundreds of comments on them already. And I've heard from other people that they felt intimidated by having so many people discussing at the same time in the same place. And I don't know how this looks like. It's 5 years, and it's hard. It's community management, and I know nothing about it. But what I hope the Go community will be able to do is keep it accessible even as it scales, and keep discussion accessible.
In our last minute, I'd just like to maybe Andy and Cass talk a little bit about the community summit and contributor summit and contributor workshop that are happening at the end of the summer.
At GopherCon Denver.
So we're putting it on. That's
yeah. So
it'll
we're
be when will it?
We didn't
We're
rehearse
going to do a
this, if
couple,
that's not
yeah,
obvious.
we had no idea. Well, the Contributor Summer, I actually wasn't a part of organizing last year, so I'm not as familiar with the format of that. You would be. I can speak to the workshop. So we're going to do another Contributors Workshop like we did last year, where you're able to sit at a table, have a teacher with you, and they're able to walk you through the process of contributing at the project right then and there. And I'm also looking at making that a more scalable solution. In addition, I don't even know if you know this, but I'm running the community day, which is going to include that, but then I also am going to do some, maybe like a tutorial or something on getting, building a community within your locales. So how to start meetups, how to get members, how to start, like where to start with teaching materials, etc. So those will be happening.
And the Contributor Summit will happen. That's all I got.
Cool.
Details TBD. But yes.
All right, that's our time, and I don't know who the MC is anymore.
We
I think
are.
it's still us,
Okay.
Yeah.
as far as I know. I mean, I could put on the hat. That feels more. Okay. All right. Oh, I broke the hat, so I'm not going to put on the hat.
How did you do that?
Before we get going, we do want to, well, thank you, panel. That's weird, because I
Yeah.
was there. So that's odd. But normally, you'd actually thank the panel and then say, okay, go ahead, and thank you.